So again, today we are thinking the teachings into the minds of humanity, the ideas and ideals which we are focused on in order to dissipate glamour and dispel illusion. So we stand together in service. Just to recap what DK tells us, what is thought? Thought is the dynamic energy that manifests differently across planes, governed by cosmic laws of the evolution of consciousness. And as our group members have shared, as we've moved forward together through the full moon of Cancer, the dynamic energy is manifesting in a way that begins to blend and merge across the planes. So from the level of soul consciousness through the mind to be demonstrated in daily activities and in all of our relationships. In all that we be, we are, so that we may be soul consciousness. In all that we are doing. We've talked about where thought resides. How are we using thought in the technique of light? How are we using thought in the technique of indifference? How are we using thought in the technique of the presence? These are techniques that we're given instructions and formulas for by Master Dwelkul. And are we beginning to recognize how those techniques are demonstrating as thought that blends and merges from meditation and service into the expression of embodiment of soul consciousness that we are in our daily lives? Let us again use the sign of the cross of divinity and sound the protective formula before we move forward. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point, I never move. We come together in the highest point and unite as a group. And we enter into a beam of directed, focused light, revealing a greater light and illumining the way to the center of the light, directing our way. We now merge with the group present and all of our current service groups in the heart, in the mind, and the heart and the head, and sound the mantra of light. Radiance we are and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour, maya, and illusion. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. Let's just reflect for a moment on our receptivity that is growing. And as we merge into and become a true part of the new group of world servers, the one planetary server, which is that subjective unit bridging between hierarchy and humanity. We're given these qualities or senses on each of these levels, and we express in our group work, in our endeavor to focus on soul consciousness, this higher mental plane where we're told the majority of humanity have the location, as it were, of the soul, if that is even an appropriate term to use. And that is the quality of spiritual discernment. And we've been using in our work together the fourth subplane, discrimination on the mental plane. But today, let us see how we can touch into the astral, that fourth subplane, psychometry, the subtle perception that humanity holds. And in DK's teaching, he suggests that this is not merely a psychic trick, but a real, if rare, ability that can be developed through meditation, discipline, and the purification of the etheric body. And then he goes on, psychometry represents astral plane sensitivity to object-based emotional imprints. So that is where humanity is currently, for the most part, functioning in relation to the emotional body, the astral thought. And it becomes kama manasic as it transitions using discrimination, the other fourth subplane, and then eventually touches intuition of the Buddhic plane. So let's just hold that in our consciousness, this idea of touching the content of the great ideas and ideals that we've been given in the teachings, and that it is so related to four, the number four, and consider how the fourth ray, the ray of harmony through conflict, is giving us new energies to tap, great energies to draw down to assist humanity as a whole in relation to fine discrimination on the mental plane and beginning to tap soul consciousness. Just hold that idea that we have this ability to take the quality of touch, the sense of touch on the physical plane, and touch the subtle astral field when we use the technique of light. We can touch through the mental field of discrimination, thought processes, and we can then begin to touch intuition. And that the fourth ray coming in and expanding may be a new avenue to begin to really fully explore how the new group of world servers can act as this bridge between hierarchy and humanity. So just think about that, hold that idea. And we'll talk a little bit about the words of power associated with the fourth ray as we move through this set of slides that we have for today. Would someone like to read this section from Externalization of the Hierarchy for us before we move on?
I can read.
Thank you.
The result of this force, the conflict which takes place within a human being's consciousness when he has reached the stage of discipleship and is faced with the problem of the pairs of opposites. This conflict is expressed in many ways according to the point of view and the background of thought. It can be called the conflict between Christ and Antichrist, but not as those who usually employ these phrases understand them. No one nation is expressive of the spirit of Antichrist, just as no one nation expresses the spirit of Christ. Christ and the Antichrist are the dualities of spirituality and materialism, both in the individual and in humanity as a whole. Or you can speak of God and the devil with the same basic implications. For what is man himself but an expression of divinity, God, in a material form, the devil? And what is matter but the medium through which divinity must eventually manifest in all its glory? But when that takes place, matter will no longer be a controlling factor, but simply a medium of expression. The battle is therefore on between the form side of life and the soul. The threshold, the dweller on the threshold of divinity, my brothers, is humanity itself with its ancient habits of thoughts, its selfishness and greed. Humanity today stands face to face with the angel of the presence, the soul whose nature is love and light and inclusive understanding. The great problem today is which of these two will emerge the victor out of the conflict, and which of these two great agencies of life will determine humanity's future and indicate the way which humanity will decide to go. If you are speaking, Joe, you're muted.
Well, blessings on you for telling me, because I was talking. This particular passage, I think, has great importance for us. We paused for the essential relation number 4, the fourth essential relation, soul and personality, with this idea of understanding the dweller on the threshold and the angel of the presence. And as we move into working on dispelling illusion, it's essential that we have some clarity in our own minds and clarity as a group on what this really means for us. And that last sentence of the first paragraph was really impactful in my own thinking, that matter will no longer be a controlling factor, but simply a medium of expression. And how important it is when one thinks about the integrated personality that we have worked so hard to achieve as individuals. And then in group formation, we are bringing that integrated personality to life in group life. And this appreciation of the personality factors that are brought into play in group formation as we work together, as that personality has become oriented to the angel of the presence. And we are beginning to dispel the illusion that the physical body is an illusion. That emotional body is another constructed illusion. The mental body is, in fact, all these 18 lower subplanes are illusory. And yet, matter does exist. But matter is no longer the controlling factor. It is simply used as a medium of expression. And for myself, that was a very helpful way to begin to look at this factor of matter that we use then for the expression of soul consciousness. Any other ideas in relation to that? Something you'd like to share?
I only reflect back on what we spoke of a few minutes ago in terms of touch. And we as human beings use touch on all planes to interact with everything in our environment. And that is a quality that our physical body actually brings within that matter. And so there was just this sort of correlation between we who touch and that medium through which the divinity manifests in the matter or the form that is our physical and our astral, and even in many ways our mental. So touch just correlates to these ideas in interesting ways.
I was just writing that same sentence down too, Joe, and now I've added, looking at matter no longer a controlling factor, I added matter is no longer an end unto itself. But maybe others have things to add. How is matter a controlling factor when it's an end unto itself? And
That's a beautiful addition to that phrase, not an end in itself. it would be interesting to think about this or ponder on this in relation to nations. Because what we see in terms of nations, the touch, the borders, this idea of borders as if borders are real, and the conflicts that have emerged based on that, based on the inability of humanity to hold the higher touch. Just an interesting consideration as we think about the problems today and how we touch through vibration, we touch through sound, we touch with light. All those manifestations of touch. So let's continue with a section from a treatise on cosmic fire. Catherine, would you read that, please?
Misunderstandings have arisen as to the purpose of the vital fluids of the universe, and this has added to the distress, as have certain distortions of the astral light, producing a subsidiary or secondary glamour or reflected light, which intensifies the Maya already created. This secondary reflection has been produced by man himself in the evolutionary attempt to balance the pairs of opposites, and has produced a condition which must be surmounted before the true occult balancing begins. It might be regarded as the sum total of that great manifestation created only by man, called the dweller on the threshold.
My sense is that as the fourth ray continues to become vitalized, that this creation of man down the eons, this dweller, would become more and more recognizable to humanity as a whole. All that has been built out on the astral plane. The imagery, we have all of our archetypes really built by man around this through humanity's thought processes and then creative processes. And it has that nature of good and bad, the duality on that level that is certainly clear if we see. I was watching one of these newer programs that's been produced for preteens, really, and younger children, that's taking the Greek myths and the names of the Greek gods and heroes and putting them in a modern context. And it is as if they are recreating this astral dynamic in this generation. And I'm wondering about how, that narrow, the Greek myths are a narrow but predominant archetypal language in Western. And yet there has, I'm sure if I were to look at Bollywood productions, I would see some of the Eastern and different cultural dynamics. But imagine all of those archetypes exist on the astral plane. And this condition must be surmounted before true occult balancing begins. So with those preteens, we're definitely dealing with the emotional body. As DK tells us, the soul infuses the astral ray through a crisis, which is really not noted by anyone outside of the individual, that crisis at adolescence. So we have a whole generation. Many of us know those in that generation who are now being infused with this ray of the emotional body. Andrea, would you read this for us, please?
The emotional body is at this time the most important body in the personality for several reasons. It is a complete unit, unlike the physical and mental bodies. It is the center of polarization for the majority of the human family. It is the most difficult body to control and is practically the very last body to be completely subjugated. The reason for this is that the vibration of desire has dominated not only the human kingdom, but also the animal and vegetable kingdoms in a lesser sense, so that the evolving inner man has to work against inclinations set up in these kingdoms. Before the spirit can function through forms of the fifth or spiritual kingdom, this desire vibration has to be eliminated and selfish inclination transmuted into spiritual aspiration. The emotional body forms practically a unit within the physical body, for the average man functions almost entirely at the instigation of the emotional, his lowest vehicle automatically obeying the behests of a higher. It is also the body that connects most directly, as has been oftentimes said, with the intuitional levels, and one path of attainment lies that way. In meditation, the emotional body should be controlled from the mental plane, and when the polarization has been transferred into the mental body through forms of meditation and intensity of purpose and of will, then the emotional becomes quiescent and receptive.
For those who've worked with preteens and teens in particular, and those who work, actually, I'm thinking of those who have worked in with yoga training and different methodologies for meditation. I think that we can see the various techniques that work that bring us to that point of the mental body controlling the astral emotional, and how you can almost see the transition in when you work with someone at a particular age, if that emotional body is really coming under the control of the soul. And I'm sure that those of us who work with hands-on healing, for example, have seen this happen where the emotional body actually is transformed through touch in a way. Would anyone like to comment on that? any example that you think is relevant, the group would benefit from knowing more about how that occurs.
You know, I'll speak to it very, very briefly. As a yoga instructor, having worked with people in just as they learn the asanas, and when you circulate within a class of practitioners and you just very gently touch parts of their body to give them the awareness of how to align, there's an incredible sort of relaxing that happens, that you feel in as you touch, and there's a transference that happens in that as well, and it really is a compassionate transference, because you are assisting in a way, and you are lovingly guiding with that sense of touch. So it's interesting to think of it from that perspective.
That is a beautiful way of expressing it, because it takes us right up to the points in which we as groups have practiced over decades these techniques of the internal process of alignment. And we are touching with thought on the astral field and touching with thought on the mental field that does achieve that level of alignment and orientation to the higher that is actually occurring in our group formations when we, use these processes we've been taught over the years through yoga, through the different meditation techniques. We are literally touching with the light of the mental plane, and in some cases, the light of the soul in group formation. So it seems to work through and up all the bodies. And in many programs now with teenagers and even younger children, using meditation, using yoga practices, using mudras to assist by using touch on that physical level that brings about that calm, centered, aligned approach on a mental as well as an emotional level. Our group meditations in service. Let's say, for example, the meditation for the Ukraine. There is literally a process of touch that is emanating out through light in that meditation, forming this protective dome around the soul of Ukraine and the physical body of humanity within Ukraine. It is these are beautiful, what we might say, higher vibratory renderings of what we do when we align with yoga, align for meditation, we're bringing in a new vibration as a group, and we're using that to assist humanity. And DK does tell us that this astral field, that has been created there, is one of the greatest impediments upon the path of return, and one for which man is directly responsible within occult limits. There are these animated forms which we have produced ever since the middle of the Atlantean root race, when the mind factor began slowly to assume increasing importance. The selfishness, the sordid motives, the prompt response to evil impulses for which the human race has been distinguished has brought about a condition of affairs unparalleled in the system. A gigantic thought form that we have created hovers over the entire human family, built by men everywhere during the ages, energized by the insane desires and evil inclinations of all that is worst in man's nature, and kept alive by the promptings of his lower desires. This thought form has to be broken up and dissipated by man himself. During the latter part of this round, before the conclusion of the cycle, and its dissipation will be one of the forces tending to the production of interplanetary pralaya. So this fifth root race, fifth sub race that we are in, and the technique of light, the technique of indifference, and then the technique of the presence have been brought to us that we may begin this really intentional process of breaking up and dissipating this huge thought form. We won't achieve it in our lifetime, but we're making progress. And then he goes on, I found this very almost amusing. It is this piece of creative bungling, if it so may be called, that the great ones are preoccupied in destroying. And under the law of karma, it has to be dissipated by those who've created it, humanity and hierarchy. The work of the masters has to be carried on, therefore, indirectly, and must take the form of illuminating the sons of men in gradually increasing degree. And that is what we are about in our meditative processes, in our service, so that humanity can clearly see this dweller on the threshold of the new life and the antagonist who stands between the fourth kingdom of nature and the fifth. These are just affirmation of our work together. Heike, would you share this with our group, voicing it?
Yes. The first was a fresh inflow of the Christ principle of spiritual or true love, which is ever free from emotionalism and selfish intent. This inflow resulted in the immediate and rapid growth of all movements towards peace, world understanding, goodwill, philanthropic effort, and the awakening of the masses of men to the issues of brotherhood. The second was the stimulation of the principle of relationship, and this led to the growth and the perfecting of all sources of intercommunication, such as the press, the radio, and travel. And now we can see the expansion of this even further with the internet, social media, AI, etc. The inner objective of all this was to bring human beings closer together upon the outer plane of existence, and thus parallel objectively the developing inner spiritual unity. The third was the inflow of the force of will or power from the Shambhala center. This, as previously explained, is the most powerful force in the world today, and only twice before in the history of mankind has this Shambhala energy made its appearance and caused its presence to be felt through the tremendous changes which were brought about.
A statement to the personality made by you, the soul, the disciple. We stand in the center of the will of God. I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from His. In unity, I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve humanity.
I want to add a comment from earlier. Apologies, Martine. The emotional sense of teens is so strong that when they're in groups, these elementals are almost uncontrollable, even if, as individuals, the boy or the girl is fine. And this is from experience as a school teacher. And I think that's really important to note because many of our teens now in the United States out of high school are joining the military, and they are being trained to enter conflict on the physical plane. And they are learning to control their emotions in relation to that role. And yet, according to Master DK, the ray of the mind isn't really in place fully until the late teens or around the age 20, 21 in average humanity. So we need to think about in our efforts with humanity as a whole, what we are going to impress through the new group of world servers across all the ray lines into the physical field that can assist these younger people who are learning to integrate their emotions. And then the mental body ray is coming in, and how that is impacting these groups in their future. What can be put in place to assist and bring them to a higher level of understanding of what soul consciousness might mean in their lives. It's a dilemma in some ways, but we were just given, go back, using the statement of the soul, that we are tasked really with managing this inflow of will and power. And we're told that that particular mantra can only be used effectively as
A statement to the
words of power
personality made by
when we are truly polarized using the mind, that we have stepped out of the emotional polarization. So this is a dilemma in terms of how this can be managed. Or any other thoughts people would like to share in relation to that? Use of the mantra of the will. All right, well, let's move on then and just take a brief look at the astrology that we'll want to consider in relation to looking at building the Antakarana and how that process engages us with those higher levels of thought. Ben, would you read this for us, please?
Christ's future scientific work, if I may use this term, with the hearts of men, bringing them into rapport with the heart of God. Is this that which is mentioned in esoteric astrology? These are the major controlling influences whereby the cosmic Christ works upon the Christ principle in the solar system, in the planet, in man, and in the lower forms of life expression. It is esoterically called the brilliant star of sensitivity. You have therefore Polaris, the star of direction, governing Shambhala. Later, another pole star will take the place of Polaris, owing to the interplay of forces in the universe and the general shift and movement. But the name and quality of this star will only be revealed at initiation. Sirius, the star of sensitivity, governing the hierarchy. Alcyone, the star of the individual, governing humanity. Sirius, working in a sevenfold manner through the seven rays and their seven groups, as these constitute the active hierarchy. The bridge, the Antakarana. Alcyone is one of the seven Pleiades, and is called the star of the individual, and sometimes the star of intelligence. It was potently active during the previous solar system, wherein the third person of the Trinity was particularly omnipotent and active, just as today the cosmic Christ, the second person of the Trinity, is peculiarly active in this.
As we move forward together in relation to understanding thought, and that there is a different thought on each plane, we're moving toward the Sirius festival, where this time occurs where the connectivity of Sirius, this great star of sensitivity in the sign of Leo, governing the hierarchy, then we have an opportunity to become the bridge, the new group of world servers becoming a bridging unit between humanity and represented by the star of the individual. And through thought on a higher plane, bridge the star of intelligence with the star of sensitivity. big concept, but if we can hold the idea of becoming the bridge, again represented by the fourth ray, the bridging ray. And he goes on to say, again, astrologers would do well to work with this line of fused forces, studying its implications and effect on the life of the disciple. Aquarius, the polar opposite of Leo, relates humanity to the Pleiades and therefore to Taurus in an unusual manner. Taurus, illumination. The key to this relation is to be found in the word desire, leading through the transmutative processes of life experience to aspiration, and finally, the relinquishing then of desire in Scorpio. So Aquarius, Alcyone, or Alcyone, and humanity constitute this most interesting triangle of force. So we're building through this year these energies and this interconnective fusion that is occurring. And this coming process of planetary service through the third divine center is only truly effective when Aquarius rules. And that is the opportunity of this Aquarian age, when our sun is passing through this sign of the zodiac. Hence the immense importance of the next 2,000 years. So we have, therefore, he says, following line of force to study. So this is cosmic planetary mind conveying thought on a cosmic level into our solar system, into the planetary being, and he traces it down to humanity. Alcyone in the Pleiades, the mothers of the seven aspects of form life, and the wives of the seven rishis of the Great Bear, connected with the mother aspect, the mother of the world, which nurtures the infant Christ, the mother of the world nurturing the Christ consciousness within us. Through Aquarius, the world server, the transmitter of energy, evoking a magnetic response. So we've been told we know the hierarchy. It is magnetic interplay within the hierarchy, the world server for us, and that comes through Jupiter and Uranus, the planets of beneficent consumption. And we're learning a lot from esoteric astrologers. The planet Uranus has moved into the sign Gemini, the sign of the cosmic Christ. So the second ray of love and the seventh ray, which fuses spirit and matter to the ultimate glory of the solar logos, are in the fullest eventual cooperation. There isn't a time better for us to be working in service and in group formation, however it manifests in our service as one of the seven ray impulses within the new group of world servers, to serve humanity, the focal point of all these energies, and the divine distributor of them to individual man, and then later to the lower three kingdoms in nature. So we have given to us in esoteric astrology a kind of blueprint for the next 2,000 years. And let's close on this thought today, that DK has given us ways in which we can access and enter into greater alignment with this blueprint through our service. So we consider, as we think and speak and share, those divine ideals, far-reaching, the divine ideas, that are given to the hierarchy for the plan, where intuition then leads us to the point where fourth degree initiates, those arhats who become adepts, can comprehend the four sounds through which we receive impressions, formulate ideas through the soul vehicle, constituted as thoughts, becoming for us thought forms of solution that can be expressed through right human relations and tap the emotional idealism of humanity to aspire to tread the path. So let's become aware of vibration, light, sound, color, and motion, continuously drawing us into closer relation with the higher and the next expansion of consciousness. We integrate through the process of group formation, orientation, alignment. So let us sound the mantra of the new group of world servers. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. And may we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right application of divine ideas.